Hi everyone. So I wanted to do a quick session on this topic called Cookieless Future. This is a topic which I have been reading up about a bit on myself, and I thought let me do a quick explainer video so that if this is something that you're discussing in work, you have a bit of context and also will give you some channel to explore further and deep dive into what exactly is happening. Because it's something which kind of is quite relevant in different aspects of today's digital landscape, and therefore I've made this video with that spirit. Uh, so to start with, let us try to understand what is a cookie and how does a cookie work, right? So right now, as of today, how the modern infrastructure works is when you have a website that you open. So for example, if there is a website and let's say that is Amazon, or it could be anything else. Uh, but primarily when you are logging into this website as a user, what you do is you end up interacting with the website such that the website is able to provide certain services to you. Now, to provide some of these services, what this website does is it uses something called a cookie, right? So, how does this cookie help? First of all, let's understand that. So, this cookie is nothing but it's kind of a containerized storage of the data that you are sharing with the website. So essentially what happens is when you're logging into the website, you provide several information, right? So you could be providing your login information. You could be providing information about your browsers that you're using, then the IP address. And from IP, we can probably get the location, etc. Right? So it could be even a device ID. So these are all user-generated data that you are sharing with the website in a way um, when you're interacting with the website. Also, another dimension of the data that you're sharing is the actual behavior that you show on the website. So the things that you do on the website. So, for example, things like the products that you're seeing, right? Or if you are adding something to your cart, right? So all of these things are actually that is being generated by you as a user, right? Now, all of this information that you generate on the website as a user, what Amazon does is it uses a software called a cookie, which is nothing as of now but a JavaScript object. So essentially, what it does is it drops a cookie on your computer. So what it does is it can be in your RAM, it could be in your ROM. So it could be session generated or it could be session level, not session generated, sorry, but it could be a session expiry level, it could be beyond session level. So essentially what that means is that what Amazon is doing is when you're logging into Amazon or when you're interacting with Amazon, Amazon drops a cookie, which is a JavaScript object, whose work is to primarily collect all this information that you're sharing on the website and store it in a containerized format, right? Now, why does this need exist? Why does Amazon do this? The main reason why Amazon is doing this or any other website is doing this is one, because it wants to give you a very well stitched and a connected journey, right? So, what do we mean by a well stitched or connected journey? Essentially, what happens is, say, for example, you have added a product to your cart, right? So let's say this is your cart. You have added a product to your cart. Now imagine if you did not have the cookie, right? Then Amazon, after, so basically what you do when you do a cart ad is you load a product page. So there's a product page and then you load the cart page, right? So when you add it to the cart page or the cart event is loaded. Now, if you again go back to a product page, right? and you were to come back to the cart page because there was no cookie, because there was no storage of information, when this cart page would have loaded, right, for the second time, and then Amazon wouldn't have been able to retain the information about the first product that you had added to the cart. And this would have led to a pinpoint, obviously. So that is one of the reasons. And of course, this is a very simplistic use case. I'm saying this typically is much, much more sophisticated, where this stitching is used for things like product recommendations. Right? So Amazon can share product recommendations with you. It can personalize your journey, right? So all of these things, right, they require data, right? And that data basically is kind of containerized in what we call as a cookie, right? Second is also because of very basic functional things, right? So functional in the sense, uh, for example, when you log in, right, in Amazon, you share your login ID and Amazon authenticates you as a logged in user. Right. So what does this mean? So when Amazon is loading all its pages, right? Again, if you see a sequence of pages in Amazon that you go on hitting, right? So you will see product one, product two, product three, and so forth. Now, Amazon, what it does in the backend is it shows a version of the page which is called the guest user version. You would probably see this in more in something, and I see this a lot in the OTTs which I use. So, for example, if you go to Hotstar today, right, and if you're not logged in, right, the rendering of the pages that is seen over there is completely different from what we see when we are logged in. The items that are shown, the eligibility, right, the gateways that we have in the app itself is completely different. So that entire functionality, right, of being able to show the user the content that is eligible as a login user is also maintained by this cookies. How? Because once the user logs in, right? So the login is just one event, right? So there is one page. Uh, if you have noticed, it's just one login, right? You give the OTP, you log in, and that's it. You don't have to log in again and again. That information about your login, right, is kind of stored in the cookie and it is persisted across the journey, right? So you don't have to again log in every time you want to load a page, right? Imagine how difficult it would be if you had to log in every time, right? So that is another very important use case which cookie kind of supports. So there are a lot of functional aspects, and then there, of course, there are a lot of connection aspects, user recommendation, user personalization kind of use cases that are there, which is why the cookie has been built. Right now, just coming back for a second to this part of what we were discussing, the cookie can be dropped on both your RAM and both your ROM, which means that a cookie can be a session level or it could be a session plus plus level. So essentially, what that means is if today, let's say when you are opening a session in Amazon, let's say in the evening, and you are there in Amazon for around, let's say, half an hour exploring for products, during the session, the cookie is active, right? And it kind of is doing whatever it has to do, all its functionalities it is actively following, right? Now, if it is a session level cookie, what will happen is after your session is terminated, right? So you have closed your session. What this cookie does is it kind of clears off, right? And again, if you start a new session, that cookie is no longer there. It's a new cookie that is there, right? Uh, Another way of the cookie persistence is at the ROM level. So in the ROM level, what happens is the cookie does not get expired after your session is over. So after you close out your browser or you're not there for 2, 3 days, that cookie will not get expired. It will still be there on your device. And what it will do, and that is what we generally see, what it does is it kind of helps you again connect back to whatever you were doing 2, 3 days back, right? So just to let you know that cookies are persisted both at a session level, that is at a short-term level, as well as a long-term level as well. Okay. So now, of course, these were some of the use cases that the cookie was kind of devised for, right? So now what we'll do is we will talk about a bit about how the cookie world works, right? And then talk about what are the different kinds of cookies that we have. So the cookie basically, when it was developed, right, it was supposed to be a first party. cookie, right? Now, what is the first party cookie? The first party cookie is nothing but what we discussed over here. Right? So exactly the use case that we discussed here, that the website that you go to, right? It drops a cookie on your local device, and that is used by that website to kind of understand your behavior, right? So that is primarily the use case of a first party cookie. And the key word over here is this is between the website that you're visiting and the user. Right? So it's just a one is to one interaction. Whichever website you go to today, if you go to Amazon, Amazon will use this cookie to kind of interact with you, and it will do what it does using these personalization recommendations, functional aspects that we spoke of. The other part of the cookie that kind of also is there, which is partly the gray area, is the third party cookie area. Now, in the third party cookie, what happens is, um, for example, if you now go to Amazon, right? So far this was between a website and a user, right? Now, what happens is in third party cookies, there is a third party, right? It could be anyone, some third party, right? Sorry, let's correct this. So some third party here, what they do is they are also allowed to drop their cookie. So while this website, which is my primary website, is dropping a cookie on my machine, what this third party is doing is it is also dropping another cookie onto my machine via this website, right? And what that cookie is doing is it is reading whatever I'm doing on the website itself, right? So think of it this way, that Facebook, for example, or Google, or any advertising agency, for example, what they can do is they can drop a cookie like this onto something like, let's say, an Amazon, right? Or it could be on a Nike website, right? So these are all websites, and these are all first-party websites which you are actually interacting with. They are the website who you want to kind of interact with, right? Now, what they're doing is they are reading your data. So you are interacting with these websites. So what Facebook and Google is doing is they're reading the data of your behavior from these websites. And that is what essentially the concept of third party cookies is, where a third party, which is not the party that the user is kind of interacting with, is collecting data about the user, right? Now, why will someone like Facebook or Google do this? Well, it's because they, as I said, are advertisers, right? So typically, any advertisers will want this data. Why? Because this is going to give them a perspective of how a user is interacting on a website and how are they going to use it. So, for example, if Facebook gets this data that user one on a website is, let's say, seeing product one, product two, etc. Right? Now, what Facebook can do is, if Facebook gets this data, what it will do is it will be able to run targeted campaigns on its own platform. So once you go back to Facebook, right, same user, and you've seen this, right? When you have seen a product on Amazon, you have selected a shoe on Amazon, let's say, or you have added a perfume to the cart on Amazon, and you go back to Facebook, right, and you try to browse through Facebook, you would typically see something very weird happening, right? That a perfume that you had added on Amazon is showing up in your feed in Facebook. It's giving you discounts, maybe, right? So what Facebook does is in this way, it helps to kind of retarget the audience, and there is kind of understanding a partnership between both Amazon and Facebook, where Amazon says, okay, I'll show you the data that the user is doing on the website. In return, what you do is when the user goes to your website or it goes to your property, you are able to kind of retarget these people from, right? Also, another use case that has happened beyond this, and that is where again it becomes a bit murky, is when this data. So think of it this way: that Facebook is getting access to a user's data on Amazon. Also, let's say on some other websites. It could be a Nike, it could be ESPN.com, or it could be anything, right? So any website that the user is going to, where they're logging in, right? So all this information is going back to Facebook. So what Facebook can do is it can kind of read all this information together, right? Again, stitch them together from different properties, and they can create a user persona, right? So then that persona will be very 360-degree in a way, because this is collecting data from multiple places, right? So it is no longer just Amazon's behavior. So Facebook using their cookies, the third-party cookies on these multiple websites, they're able to actually tell if a person maybe is going to, let's say, vote for a certain candidate, right? What are their political beliefs? What are their religious beliefs? So essentially, that is where this was one of the major issues that happened, where using all this data, it was accused. I'm not sure if this actually went to a place where Facebook or Google were able to were acquitted. But essentially, what happened is it was seen that people who were right-wing supporters, right, they started seeing more pro-right-wing videos, and then liberals started seeing more liberal aiding videos and stuff like that. So what happens is, because the data is no longer in the control of this first party, right, or the party that as a user is interacting with, and the data has gone out of control. What most people would feel, and to a certain degree, there is a reason to feel that way, is that their data is getting utilized and leveraged in ways that they would probably not want the data to be leveraged and utilized, right? And that is where we will move to the third part of this discussion about how this has changed and what has happened legally. Right. Now, on the now while this has happened, now while this has all happened, and because of these kind of situations where users were not feeling very safe about the data that they were sharing on the website, there were several legislative steps that were taken. Uh, and one popular rule which already exists, and maybe a lot of you have heard, is GDPR. So this is the data protection rule that was introduced. I think this is followed primarily with European clients, and I think with North America clients as well. Then there was something called a CCPA, right, which is again a Data Protection Act, which was again introduced in California, if I remember. So now these are regulations. Now, what are these regulations saying? So essentially, using these regulations, what we are trying to ensure is that while yes, it is not um, possible probably for this third party, um, you know, situation to be promoted, but at least the website, right, which is the first party, these are actually implied on the first party, not on the third party, uh, is collecting data within certain framework, within certain legal framework, right? So, for example, websites cannot collect PII data of a customer, right? So, what is the PII data? Something like, let's say, they cannot, for example, collect information like your name plus gender plus, let's say, your relationship status as a single uh, set of data. So basically, they cannot or they should not be able to tie back these three information together. Yes, they can collect your gender, for research purposes. They can also collect relationship status as a data point. But this all, when stitched back to your name, becomes personally identifiable information. Someone can identify you uh, with this name, and then they can see that you have these attributes. So that particular aspect has been stopped by these regulations. You cannot collect PII. Again, you can collect these data points, mind you. You can collect the gender data. You can collect relationship status data, but it has to be collected in a format which is only for analysis purpose. For example, the gender data is often used by website to see what is the percentage of the ratio of genders that are coming in, but that data cannot be stitched back to a certain person, right? So that is what PII stands for, right? So these regulations are primarily focused on PII. That is one aspect. The other aspect of this is towards the third party shopping, which has been directly implied on the browsers. So browsers like our Chrome or Safari, right? So essentially, why has it gone to the browser? Because see, what happens is when a cookie is dropped by the website, right? So if I take again the example of the website, right? So when the website is dropping the cookie on your machine, it actually drops that cookie via the browser, right? So the browser is the software or is the intermediary software using which this Amazon.com, for example, is able to drop a cookie onto your machine, right? And the browser is the one who is going to maintain that cookie on our machine, and it's going to help in exchange of data between the machine and Amazon.com. So now the browsers which were enabling this, which were the middlemen for the sort of a cookie interaction, have been told to bring a stop to any sort of third-party cookie activities. So, for example, uh, Safari, for example, has been able to bring in something. So, Safari, for example, has been able to bring in something called an ITP, right? So intelligent tracking protocol, where any sort of third-party cookies are not allowed to be established on their browser. Also, they have become very stringent on the first-party cookies. So they have introduced a 7-day first-party cookie expiry, which means that, as I said right earlier, that there could be cookies which are session-level cookies or which could be visitor session plus level cookies, right? Which means it stays on your machine for a certain number of days. It helps you stitch multiple sessions across days. Now, that has been limited to a 7-day window by Safari. Chrome has also said, I think, in coming times, they are going to bring out some rules to kind of curb this third party rule. Browsers like Firefox, anyways, did not allow third party cookie tracking, right? So that is the mandate on the browser that have been given, that you have to make sure that third-party cookies are then they're legally bound to ensure that third-party cookies are not placed onto a user when they are visiting a website, right? Uh, so now what that means is, every all these browsers, they have also tried to bring out new architectures. They have tried to bring out new ways of handling this. One way of handling this has been like to move away from, collecting PI information to making contextual retargeting. So essentially, what that means is instead of looking at gender and maybe let's say age, you just show people what are the products that are discounted, right? So that becomes a bit generic, right? So it doesn't give you that grip on that personalization, but that is one framework that has been proposed. Then there are user consents that you would see now, right? So you would see that there are a lot of consent forms that you would be seeing where they will be giving you an option that whether, and then there will be like something like essential cookies, right? Essential cookies, and then there will be optional cookies, right? And they will tell you like, why do we need essential cookies? Why do we need optional cookies? So you give your consent to this. That's saying that, okay, I just need the essential cookies for my performance of the website, and the optional cookies you don't choose, right? So they cannot retarget you. They cannot use this data beyond the website, right? So that is one aspect of it that has happened. There is also another framework that has come up, which is called the server side uh, tracking, server-side data tracking. So what this means is, okay, let's give you an example. What happened previously is that the mechanism of data collection on user was something like this, right? So you have your machine, which is your browser basically, right? And on this browser, right, there was this cookie that was placed by the browser on your machine. And whatever data this cookie was sending, right, whatever data this browser and cookie was interacting, it was happening on your local machine itself, right? So essentially, your application which is running on the machine and the cookie that was placed in your machine were interacting together to generate data, right? And then this data was going to, different platforms. It could be going to your analytics platform. It could be going to your marketing platforms, right? So that way, it was just being sent right from your machine to these different platforms. If you have seen how tag management works, you will see this, right? That tag managers are firing on the browser itself, and that data is being collected in the tags, and those tags are in turn sent to the platforms that you're using. But now there is a move or a shift, or at least a recommended shift that has been given that, hey, don't send the data directly from the browser to these platforms. Instead, what many companies are doing is they are sending this data to a server, right? So another server where all the data will be collected, it will be stored in a certain format in the server. And from the server, right, depending on what sort of use cases we have, and also ensuring that we have all our data guidelines in place, this data is being shared with the third party tools. So that is what a server side data tracking means. I think Adobe has got something called AEP. Google's GTM has come up with these containerized solutions now. You have, I think, Mixpanel also does this. Segment also does it. So most of the tag management solutions, data management, data platforms are doing this. So that is how we are trying to control, the limitation of how third party and untrusted sources of sharing data can be stopped. So yeah, I mean that in a nutshell is what I found out by reading across several documentations about cookies. I hope you found this session to be kind of interesting and also insightful. Thank you.